I'm Timmy T1000, and welcome to 76 Beginner Builds. Tonight, we're going to go over my Power Armor Heavy Gunner build that I like to call Big Gun Boy. This is a level 50-ish build that is really designed for you to work towards in the early game, and then just kind of be able to do pretty much everything, all content in 76. You'd be able to relatively easily participate in once you hit about level 50 to 60. So let's go ahead and go start with some of the perks. We're running 13 strength, 12 perception, 11 endurance, 1 charisma, 3 intelligence, 11 agility, and 5 luck. And then under legendary perk cards, we are also running strength, and then we were able to put the 2 stars into it. I didn't have enough perks left over to be able to add a 3rd star or max it out. So we were only able to get 2 stars this time. We are running some of the usual suspects like traveling pharmacy and true hiker, because food, drink, and chems tend to get heavy and they tend to accumulate a lot. Since this is a VATS focused build, we are running packing light and a maxed out action boy. That's going to help us be able to regenerate our AP a lot faster. Since this is a starter build, we are not relying on any legendary effects, really. We're not relying on anything that requires luck from these builds. I try to eliminate just so that way it's as consistent and replicatable for everybody. The main damage mechanic we're going to be using is Bulletstorm. This is going to give us plus 9 damage for every 30 ammo expended. So in Fallout 76, the way Bulletstorm works is it goes off of projectiles fired, not rounds spent. So like, let's say you have a shotgun, for example. If you shoot that and it has 8 projectiles, that counts as 8 ammo expended. So we are going to be using a Gatling gun, which base comes with 250 rounds. And then once you get the large magazine, it ups to 500. So that covers everything we need. Just kind of so you know. We're also running crippled easy targets. So we're running a ballistic weapon. So we're going to cripple enemies relatively quickly. Locked and loaded is just so we can keep half our Bulletstorm. Because once we hit level 50, we are actually able to get up to 20 Bulletstorm pretty easily. And we want to keep some of that when we reload. And then we also have scattered shots. So that way, when we are dealing damage to a limb, we are spreading some of that damage out to cripple multiple limbs to turn on other perks later. So this is a VATS-centric build. That's why we're running Action Boy. So we do have concentrated fire, which will give us extra accuracy. Not that we need it with the 2 guns we're using, but it's good just to have just in case. And then Tank Killer, we want armor penetration, awareness, more accuracy. Tormentor is going to be a big boost to damage because we get 20% extra damage for every limb that we cripple. So again, this is something I've talked about in other videos where the way limbs work in 76 is a head, torso, arms, and legs. Those are all limbs. Any individual thing you can target in VATS is a limb. So that is something to keep in mind. So this will give us, like on a human, this could give us upwards to 120% extra damage. We are running Number Cruncher. Both of our guns have 20 plus AP per round fired. So they do tend to, they're getting a very significant boost. This is just so we can, inspirational is just so we can get a little extra XP. Batteries are included. Since we're in Power Armor, we're running fusion cores. They're very heavy. And then we are running First Aid. This is for our stim packs. I did put an internal database mod on the helmet of our Power Armor, as well as we are running around on a casual team. So that boosts if we're on a full team, that does boost our intelligence from 3 to 7, which gives us about a 30% boost to our stim packs. So I think that's pretty good. Iron Stomach, it's just extra damage resistance. Thirst Quencher, more AP. Natural resistance. This is our main way for getting cryo, fire, and poison resistance. It's not a ton, but for 1 perk point, you get about 30 to 40 poison resistance, which is actually pretty good. And we're also in Power Armor. We are running Rejuvenated. The reason why we're running Rejuvenated over some like Life Giver, for example, is because we have access to Rejuvenated at level 12. I'll show you when we go to the leveling chart in a little more detail why, because you're only allowed to pick one perk at level 50. So I picked bringing the big guns instead, so that way we had double the Bloodstorm stack as opposed to like Life Giver. So yeah. This does give us like 4 extra endurance and 4 extra strength while we are fully fed. So it gives us an incentive to keep our food and drink meter full. Again, Ironclad, this will give us 30% extra resistances from our armor. We are running Excavator, so getting some more. And I could very easily see an argument for like cutting Iron Stomach and even potentially natural resistances to just max this out. But I wanted to kind of spread it around a little bit, just in, just for, I found that like getting the 50-ish, 60-ish energy and damage resistance from this, and then the 30 to 40 elemental resistances actually gives you a more overall tankiness versus having this up at 50% instead of 30. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. The numbers might show slightly different, but I haven't noticed much of a difference. And then the last thing under endurance is bullet shield. This just gives us a 15% ricochet chance for 6 seconds while we're firing our heavy gun. We are running ricochet also under luck. Our luck isn't super high. It's actually pretty low, but just having the ability to have those trigger, even if it's like, because that gives the bullet shield gives us 15%, and then we probably have about a 12% chance with ricochet. But when I go into the game, we can double check those numbers. So we are running under luck. We're running one gun army because we want more limb damage, because we want to cripple limbs, so that way easy target, tormentor, those things will kick in and we'll get extra damage. This also staggers enemies, which is nice to kind of help keep them off of us. Junk shield. So if you carry 100 junk in your inventory and lock it, and even with a luck of like 5, like we're having, that's still about 80 energy and energy resistance and damage resistance for 1 perk point, which is really, really nice in my opinion. But it's definitely better when you have more luck. As you level up this character, you'll start rounding out those legendary perk cards, and you will start, especially in VATS, you'll want to start investing in critical perks, maybe mutations. Like, I didn't account for any mutations in any of this. But anyway, so under agility, we're running 2 points in Born Survivor. This will trigger at 30% health once every 20 seconds. We're also running a medic pump on the torso. So that gives us 1 instance of auto stim checking at 50%. And then this does it again at 30%. So that way, in case if we're really getting hit hard, like if we're really getting pummeled, it'll help us overheal to kind of compensate, to make us a little bit tankier. Gunslinger, because we want weak spot damage. I'm only running 1 gunslinger or 1 onslaught perk for 2 reasons. 1, I didn't have the points to really invest more into it, and 2, since I couldn't reliably find a heavy gun with Furious. I mean, I could roll them with luck and stuff, but I just couldn't consistently find it. I felt that it was better just to focus on the Bulletstorm. But this does give us this converts our weak spot damage from 12 to 15% just for 3 hits. So, I mean, that's something that we'll basically always have, especially considering we're in VATS a lot, at least with this build. So, and we do have a ton of AP regen. So yeah, so let's go down the leveling chart. So basically, as you can see, the first 10 levels, I mean, we're really going to be pumping a lot of stuff here. I mean, we're at level 8 and we still need 15 more levels to get everything. But as you notice, we start hitting gaps where we start kind of closing it up. And by the time we hit level 49, I actually wound up just randomly picking whatever perk I wanted. I actually took stabilized, even though I didn't have room for it, just for later. But at level 50, you only get 1 perk point. And if you look under endurance, Life Giver is level 50. And then under intelligence, power user is level 50, which is the other one like I would really want. And then bring in the big guns is also level 50. So my options were like give myself like an extra 80 to 100 life, which would be really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not. Going from doing, 90% damage to 180% extra damage with my gun, or, getting extra 30% fusion core charge. I think the decision to go with, hold on one second. I think the decision to go with the extra damage is a lot better. In fact, I am using a little bit. I'll go on over. We're about to go over to the equipment here in just a second, but I did want to touch base with that. Like, honestly, in a perfect world, I would probably go to level 55, pick up a life giver, and then pick up those 3 points in power user and fit those into here somehow. But again, I stopped at level 50 for the build video just that way. It was, I had to pick a number. I mean, technically I could just keep going all the way to 300 but anyway. So let's go down to the equipment next. Now that we've got the kind of like the basics of the leveling guide out of the way. So we are not running mutations because again, sure, I can find them in player vendors sometimes, but not reliable. There's only one place to get them reliably, like for sure. And they're about 5K a piece. And that is from the Modus terminal in the medical wing of the Enclave bunker. And while that is an option, and I would encourage, if you can't find them other ways, I would encourage getting them that way. But again, like I thought it was too much of an investment for how I never had that many caps laying around. I was still spending most of my time getting resources together. So in power armor, we are looking at like, these are going to be our base special stats, 340 health, So for our armor, for our power armor, let's move down to this. We're using excavator, which is going to give us a full set of, we're going to be getting about 100 and, oh, this is not maxed out. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, it's not a ton extra, but it does make a slight difference. We are looking at about 240 ballistic resistance, 240 energy, and 200, and then about, I think it's 240 radiation. That is across the board, and that is before any perks kick in to kind of modify it. So that's kind of where I'm getting at with the only taking the 1 point in Ironclad, like getting the 30% boost versus the 50% boost. While the number is bigger with the 50%. In actuality, you're only looking at about 40 to 50 extra. 10% of 240 damage and energy resistance is only 24. So that's 48 for those extra two 10%. Whereas we can get some cryo and we can get more. We can min-max a little better by using the iron stomach because it'll give us about 60. And actually, and the same thing with junk shield. Like junk shield will give us a little bit more as well. And those do scale better. Obviously, in a perfect world, I'd probably max out that and then use the other ones. But with what we have, it isn't a super huge difference. Did not do any. So I got the internal database on the helmet. That is to help with our stim packs, help with our leveling, so on and so forth. There is another option that you could do if you want it. You could go with the sensor array to get a little more perception, which would help with your vax accuracy. But honestly, with both the guns we're using, the perception we already have built in and awareness, I didn't find it was necessary. And then under the torso, I did go with the medic pump. I like the medic pump because it gives us an auto stim feature, so that way, we don't have to break VATS as often. So yeah. And then under the leg mods, I went with the cooling vents. Mostly because I was having a hard time keeping in fusion cores all the time because you burn a lot of fusion cores using VATS and power armor. And every bit of the ability, I mean, while that's only 10% more for the investment of like the materials and the cost, it was a pretty low barrier to entry. I mean, honestly, I would like to put the 3 points into power user, get that in there on my build, and then put calibrated shocks on. But calibrated shocks are, first off, the plan for calibrated shocks is 6,000 cabs, which is very cost prohibitive when you're trying to buy your plans for your weapons and level up and get scrap and as well as, and versus the cooling vents, which were only 400. And then the other thing, calibrated shocks require flux. And since we're building up to get to end game content, it's another one of those things where like you have a hard time getting it until you kind of cross that threshold. Like, sure, like once you cross that threshold, you start doing raids, you start doing a lot of boss fights, like Scorched Earth and Colossal Problem and stuff. Those things don't become such a problem. But getting to that point, which is kind of really what this is like, this build is for, is to get players going from the vault kind of through some of the early quest lines, the early content, and give them something kind of solid to build with. So I kind of felt that, the excavator, you can get it with, basically what you do is I'll show in game. We're almost done talking about the equipment, but you get the excavator at level 25, and then you just kind of start upgrading it. I mean, between level 25 and level 45, which is where you can get the max, I mean, you're talking about trying to build a set twice, at least twice, because once to initially get it, and then once again to have your final set. Like, it's a lot of material. And to be honest, like, unless you got a bunch of friends helping you out, like it's not super likely. I did go with Brotherhood of Steel heavy combat armor just to for like running around if I wasn't in power armor. It gives you the best resistances overall. Treated vault lining or resistant vault lining. I've used this in other videos. I'll talk about how to get it here in a minute. As well as, I did get a level, small backpack, nothing new there. Bought the deep pockets. So let's get to the guns. So the main gun I'm using is this Gatling gun. This thing is very ammo efficient. It does pretty good damage. Honestly, the best legendary effect I found for it was 2-shot, because it makes your bullet storm tick up a lot faster. And with the ammo capacity, like I was hitting like max bullet storm and then still having a bunch of ammo left over, which was really nice. And then also, this is available at level 20. And then there's a couple of spots on the map that you can farm for it that I will show when we get into the video. And then for backup, there's a 50 cal machine gun that you can get at level 25. So yeah, so I will be right back and we will be in game. So see you in just a moment. Okay, so outside of power armor, as you can see, we have moderate resistances of 454, 506 versus ballistic energy, which, I mean, that's actually pretty solid that's just having the heavy combat armor. And then we've got 40 poison, fire, and cryo. And we have almost no radiation resistance, but our armor doesn't give us any. And then once we hop into our power armor, which we will do right now, that was the set that I got kind of at the beginning. You can see that our stats go up a little bit, but we also get a lot of radiation resistance. The other thing to remember with power armor is that each piece has a built-in bonus of 7% damage reduction. So whereas our regular armor is about 100 weaker, we don't have that 7% per piece, reducing any incoming damage. And then under the effects tab, you can see we get the extra strength, the extra carry weight. Now right here, this is the effect of being fully fed while using the rejuvenate perk. You get +4 strength and +60 HP instead of 1 strength and 35 HP. And then under hydrated, you get 4 endurance and 60% additional HP regen. So like, I mean, we're looking at quite a bit, because we've got 45% from Action Boy and Girl. We get 25% from Pack-in Light while we're not over encumbered. And then another 60% there. I mean, our energy and damage output is pretty solid. So the Gatling gun does better, just base, than the 50 cal. The 50 cal is has a higher rate of fire. It does have a slightly smaller magazine. I actually pick up a 1-star of the. All right. So first thing we want to talk about is how do you get the power armor. So this is the Rusty Pick. So for those of you that don't know, the Rusty Pick is a location where that has a script machine where you can turn in junk legendary weapons and armor that you don't want for legendary script. And you can either buy legendary modules from the vendor in here or buy random legendary weapons or armor or power armor for the price of script. But that's not actually why we're here. What we want is just outside, there is a Garen excavator poster. When you are level 25 and you interact with this, it will start a quest that will send you down to the Garen mining headquarters to build the excavator power armor and register it. And then you can get all the mods from inside the White Springs, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But one of the resources that you'll find that you'll have a hard time with getting is this power armor requires a lot of black titanium. So right next to, the reason why we went here is because it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, is you activate that, and then you can also get these, you might have vending machines, you can pick up these posters. The excavators map these basically unlock little mini quests for you to get large, like kind of caches of scrap, of just basic scrap components, not junk items. And you're guaranteed to get 20 black titanium off of the excavator map. The prospector map gives you 15, and the miner map gives you 10. And you can buy all 3 of them, do the quest, get a little XP for it, and what you do is basically you just go and you dig up a little cache that you'll find inside of like a certain area on the map. But you can server hop and buy these maps over and over and over and farm a bunch of resources with them, which is pretty nice. And then you can use that to get your black titanium to make your power armor. Then the next thing you want to do is either go to this vendor here at the Watoga station, and then to the Watoga shopping plaza. That's a Brotherhood of Steel vendor. And that's where you'll get the weapon plans. You can also go to the White Springs Mall. There's a Brotherhood of Steel vendor there, and there is a responder vendor there. The Brotherhood of Steel vendor will give you the plans for the 50 cal and for the Gatling gun as well. And then the responder vendor will give you the mod plans for all the excavator power armor. So the medic internal database, the cooling vents, or the calibrated shocks as well, just so you know. And then lastly, there's 2 spots that you can go and get. So this lucky hole mine here, which is just a little bit west of Fort Defiance. So this is Big Ben Tunnel East right here. That's Fort Defiance, where you get sent for the main, the part of the Brotherhood of Steel quest line. And then but you want to go to this Lucky Hole mine, and then in the back of the mine, there's a chance for a spawn for a level Gatling gun at level 20. So you can start farming them, and then as you level up, start building up ammo, and then as you level up, you can scrap them to start learning the mods. So, and then another thing you can do is if you happen to get lucky and it's Mothman Equinox, you can actually come to Point Pleasant and farm Gatling guns at the Mothman Equinox event, because a lot of the cultists there will have Gatling guns. I hope you find this video useful, and I hope you can use this to kind of get you off to a little better start. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you see me on Discord, I either play on my personal Discord, which is an invite is linked in the description, or the 76 Discord. I'd be more than happy to help. But just be respectful if I'm helping somebody else, or, at the moment, you can message me to remind me to talk to you later or something like that. So, but without that, have a good night and bye.